There's a famous Gemara in Rosh Hashanah on Daf Yud Ches, where the Gemara quotes two psukim. One pasuk, which is quoted, is a pasuk from the Torah, which is what Moshe Rabbeinu says to Klal Yisrael. Mi kashem Elokeinu b'chol kareinu elov. Who is as great as our God whenever we call out to him? Meaning, regardless of the time of year, whenever we supplicate Hashem, he's attentive to our supplication. And yet there's another pasuk, which are the words of Yeshaya Novi, where Yeshaya Novi says, Dirshu Hashem b'yimotzu, kro b'yosakorov. You should seek out Hashem when he's found, and you should call to him when he's close. So the inference is that when will he be attentive to your supplication? When he's found and when he's close. But the times when he's not, therefore, seemingly, your bakosha, your supplication, will not be embraced by Hashem. So how do we reconcile Moshe Rabbeinu's the Ava Nevi'im, the Torah itself, Mika Hashem Elokeinu Chol Karei Elov, and Yeshaya Novi says, Dirshu Hashem b'yimotzo kiro b'yosakorov. Some more answers, Ha b'yochad b'tzibur. There's a difference. The tzibur, when the tzibur calls out to Hashem, a tzibur, 10 Jews, it's a microcosm of Klal Yisrael. It's the Edo, as it's referred to in the Torah. Edo, 10 male Jews. When we call out to Hashem, it's the equivalent of Klal Yisrael calling to Hashem. Then Hashem's always attentive. That's Chol Kareinu Elov. But as an individual, it's Dirshu Hashem b'yimotzo kro b'yosakorov. You have to seek him out when he's found and when he's close. Even as an individual, although we don't have the Schus HaTzibur, we don't have the merit of the equivalent of Klal Yisrael, even as an individual, because of the degree of closeness and intimacy which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has with each individual, during this period of time, even the individual, his bakosha is attended. Hashem is attentive to his bakosha. And when is this time? That's Dirshu Hashem b'yimotzo kro b'yosakorov. When is he found and when is he close? Omer Rabba Ravua el asor yomim shbein Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim. Says Sarasimi Tshuva, meaning the time at this moment, which began with Rosh Hashanah and culminates with Yom Kippur, these are the 10 days of Dirshu Hashem b'yimotzo kro b'yosakorov. He's motzo, he's found, and he's close, and therefore we have to take advantage of the moment. But if it's a tzibur calling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chol Kareinu Elov, whenever we call to him. So seemingly that the supplication of the Yochid during Aser Semei Tshuva is the equivalent of the tzibur calling out throughout the year. Although Hashem is not found and he's not close in terms of the level of relationship, but if a tzibur calls, the source of Klal Yisrael, we find, the Gemara tells us in Avodah Zarah that as an individual, as a yochid, one should not be mispalel, musif, during the first 3 hours of the day. The Gemara over there speaks about a HaKadosh Baruch Hu's schedule. What's his daily schedule? So the Gemara tells us that the first 3 hours of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Yeshiv Leimei Torah. God learns Torah. Hashem learns Torah. As the Gemara refers to it elsewhere in Shas. The second 3 hours, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Yeshiv Adonis Ha'olam. He judges the world. The third 3 hours a day, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He determines how much sustenance from the largest creature, B'karnei reimim on beitzei kinim. How much he has to sustain them, provide sustenance for them. And the fourth 3 hours, He's loy miturim tinoik shabis rabon. That's what he does. So Rashi explains over there who tinoik shabis rabon. These are children who were nifter, who passed away before bar mitzvah. He learns Torah with the neshamas. So Mara says that since Rosh Hashanah is Yom Adin, and the evaluation is so exacting, that's din, exactness, so therefore, as an individual, as a yochid, you should not be mispalel during the first 3 hours of the day, because what do we say? We say zechreinos. We want to be remembered for good, in a good vein. So unless you're part of a tzibur could pray during, say, Musaf during the first 3 hours of the day. Why? That's chus tzibur. That's chus tzibur. So even though it's the most exacting moment of evaluation, doesn't make a difference. The schus tzibur overweighs that. But as a yochid, as an individual, we don't have the schus tzibur. You should not be mispal as a yochid, as an individual, during the first 3 hours of the day, only during the second 3 hours of the day. So the Gemara asks, but according to the order of the schedule, as the Gemara presented it, the first 3 hours, the second 3 hours, he's Yeshivat Ohr Somayach. He judges the world the second 3 hours. So Gemara says no, that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu learns Torah, that's the ultimate level of exactness. Why? And it quotes a pasuk because Shlomo says in Mishlei, "Emes kanei val timkor." You should acquire truth, and you should not sell truth. What Torah is truth? Truth. The Maral explains, the Maral of Prague, that if you take emes and you take the aleph off emes, aleph always connotes something which is infinitesimal, minute. What's left? Mem tov. Mes. Worthless, dead. So, emes keneiv al timkor. Torah itself is exactness. Torah Hashem tamima. It's perfect. If it's detracted, it's anyway diminished as much as an iota. Even on an infinitesimal level, it's no longer emes. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu learns Torah, and the Maral explains, if somebody asks a question la halacha, is it permitted, not permitted? There's no yes or no. There's no gray. It's either yes or no. Even though the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, mitzvah is pshara is to mediate. But mediation is not, it's only because both of the balidinim, the defense, they agree to mediation. But din is what? It's either chayev or potur. Either you're liable or you're not liable. That's what it is. That's emes. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Yeshivat Ohr Torah, there's no room for anything but exact evaluation. Tzibur has schus tzibur. The schus tzibur could actually deal with that. But as an individual, therefore, the second 3 hours, although he's Yeshivat Ohr Somayach, since it's not a time that he's loy Torah, so it's not emes, it doesn't have to be unadulterated truth. Even as a yochid, you could say the musaf during the second 3 hours of the day. Even the schus, but of course this has to do with also Rosh Hashanah, even though it's Yom Adin, it's part of what? That's Dirsha Hashem b'motzu kirov yosekorov. That since we have this added feature of relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu during the Aseh Shmei Tshuva, which is he's motzo and he's korov, we have both, he's found and he's close to us. So therefore, although we don't have the schus hatzibur, but in terms of Yom Adin, it's sufficient that even though he's Yeshivat Ohr Somayach, he's judging the world, the yochid could actually be seen in a positive vein, based on who he is. That's the Gemara. We're talking about Disho Hashem b'motzi korosov yosekorov. But at Tzibur, it's b'chol karein elov. Whenever. Take a look in the Rambam. The Rambam himself, when he cites this Gemara, the Rambam writes, although doing tshuva and crying out for forgiveness is very positive and has great value regardless when, but however, during this 10-day period between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, has exceptional value. Umiyad hi miskabelis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu receives it immediately. There's no delay. Miyadi miskabelis. That's interesting. The Rambam, when he speaks about the various levels of transgression, he speaks about mitzvah saseh, positive commandment, lo saseh, negative commandment, lo seish bokores, a negative commandment carries spiritual excision, or mises bezdin, the death penalty. When he speaks about mitzvah saseh, person didn't say Kriya Shema, didn't eat matzah on the 15th of Nisan, didn't sit in the sukkah, take Daled Minim. It says, when he does tshuva, enu zoz mishamat shemeichel noisei. He remains steadfast, and he will be forgiven. There's no delay. But the loshin, it's enu zoz mishamat shemeichel. It seems to be over here, the loshin during Aser Shmei Tshuva, that it's because he's himotzo and korev. It's even more than that. It's even more than enu zoz mishamat shemeichel noisei. He doesn't move from there until they forgive you. I mean, you have a right to make your claim, you have a right to be forgiven. Here it seems to be, it's miyad. The Rambam says, umiyad miskabelis. It's received immediately. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes it immediately. Shenemar, Diusha Hashem b'motz grosa b'sekorov. Okay? But the Rambam continues, b'medvar murim b'yochid. This halacha of during Aser Shmei Tshuva from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, that's the individual. Avol tzibur, b'tzibur kozman she'oisen tshuva v'tzoikim b'leiv sholem. A tzibur, whenever they do tshuva and they cry out with a full heart, meaning full sincerity, heinenin, they will be answered. Also, it doesn't say miyad. Heinenin doesn't say miyad. Shenema kashem elkeinu chol karein elov. Seemingly, the Rambam understands, you have to understand where the Rambam sees it in the Gemara, there's a number of differences. The Yochid, the individual during Aser Shmei Tshuva, he uses the Loshin, the words he uses is miyad. The Tzibur, heinenim. Hashem answers them. Is it miyad? Seemingly, if the Rambam didn't write the word miyad, it may not be miyad. It may yes, may not. Also, it seems to be from the Gemara that the Yochid during Aser Shmei Tshuva is the equivalent of the Tzibur throughout the year. The Tzibur throughout the year, B'chol Korei Ne'elov. The Yochid, Dishu Hashem B'motzoi, it's what is the equivalent of the Tzibur. However, the Rambam adds something with the Tzibur. When he mentions the Yochid, he says, HaTshuva Tzok Yofa Lo'elam, Basari Yomim should be Ben Shoshana Yom Kippurim, he yofe biyoser umiyad he miskabelis. And he quotes the pasuk. He doesn't say v'tzokin b'leiv sholim. He doesn't say v'tzoik b'leiv sholim. During Aser Shmei Tshuva, when he speaks to Yochid, he doesn't mention this aspect that it has to be tzoyek b'leiv sholim. V'tzoyekin. When he speaks about the tzibur, tshuva v'tzoyekin, the Rambam adds the words b'leiv sholim. It seems to be from here that the Midas HaRachmim during Aser Shmei Tshuva, what Yeshaya Novi is communicating to us, is so overwhelming that even though it falls short of the Leiv Sholem, which is needed for the tzibur throughout the year, it's miskabelis, miyad. That's what it seems from the Rambam. The Gemara seems to equate, it's exactly the same thing. But the tzibur is throughout the year, that's what the Yochid, the individual, is what during Aser Shmei Tshuva. From the Rambam, the way the Rambam states is the difference, and he's very specific. The Rambam, the words, every word is accounted for. It's miyad for the yochid, for the individual, immediate. The tzibur, it says nenin. Secondly, the tzibur, throughout the year, it's what? It's tzoyek b'leiv sholim. When he speaks about the yochid, the tzoyek. It's tzoyek. Doesn't add the word leiv sholim. So we see over here that the midas harachmim during Aser Shmei Tshuva is so overwhelming that literally, even though it may fall short of what's normally needed, even for the tzibur, and even though the tzibur it's nenin, but it's not miyad, the yochid is miyad. So you could imagine if you have a tzibur during Aser Shmei Tshuva, which is what you have the schusat tzibur, and you have everything going. You have the schusat tzibur, and you have b'leiv sholem. You could imagine exactly how the Midas HaRachmim deals with this, how it embraces it, that it's miyad, there's no question, it's miyad with the tzibur. There's no delay. Seemingly that's what you see in the Rambam. I had a thought on Rosh Hashanah during the davening. We say, you know, that Rosh Hashanah is the Yom Adin. It doesn't say it anywhere in the Torah. It doesn't say it's the Yom Adin. The Torah refers to it as Yom Truah. It's a day of the Truah. Truah seemingly means, there's a question what the word Truah means. Does it mean Shvarim? Is the 3 broken blasts? Does it mean the Truah, what we call the Truah? The staccato, short blasts, 9 of them? Or is it both, a combination of Shvarim Truah? What is it? But what's the discussion in the Gemara? The Targum Ukeles says, what is Yom Truah? Yom Yabava. It's a day of crying. Now, why should we cry? Hayom Harasa Ilam. Adam came on the scene. He was created. The whole Tachlis Abriya came to fruition. Adam's here to be Boicher, to be a Baal Bechira. It's what? It's the anniversary of creation. Adam. But it's Yom Yabava. It's a day of crying. So that itself is a remez that what? That something, one doesn't cry. We're not talking about tears of simcha. We feel like the Pasuk says, Leiv nishbav nitke elokim lo sivzeh. When a person's devastated, a person feels that himself, he's at a loss, he doesn't know where to turn. It's very interesting. What gives a person a sense of confidence? What gives a person a sense of self? What gives a person a sense of self is your accomplishments throughout your life. That's what gives you a sense of self. What about if you come to a moment and you realize what you considered something of value turns out to be worthless? So the basis that you felt that you had value, all of a sudden in a moment, you come to that, what we call the rude awakening, that has no value. Once that happens, all kinds of fears come upon the person, because right now he feels, what is his value? He has no value. Who am I? I am whatever. It's like years ago, I used to say to a person who would come to a lecture of mine, I said, who are you? Who are you? I'm an attorney, I'm a doctor. I said, I didn't ask you what you do. Who are you? The answer is because the whole chashivos, the whole innate value of this person, the way he valued himself is based on his accomplishment. Who am I? I have that specialty. I have this. I say, who are you? They don't know who they are. I'm a Yid, I'm a Shomer Mitzvahs, I'm a Maimin, I believe in Yudkei Ikri Emunah, that's who I am. That's our value. I'm here to what? To work on being an Eved Hashem. That's my purpose in existence. Everything else is only to facilitate it, whether you're the doctor or you're the attorney or the physicist, whatever you are. But the essence, the moment the person realizes that whatever that is not there, if he's not what he should be, right away he feels negated. He feels batil. He's not there any longer. That's what happens. If a person himself comes to realization, when he does tshuva, tshuva is what? What are the components of tshuva? Charot and Kabbalah. You have remorse for the wrong that you had done, and you are committed, as the Rambam says, that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu attests to the fact he's not going back there. But it's much more than that. Charot is not saying, I'm sorry, alone. To be fully rehabilitated, you have to have a sense of pain, shame. Your conscience, you can't live with it because, and that's why it's tzeikin. The Gemara tells us that a person's about tshuva, what does he do? He changes his name. He doesn't want to even identify with that past any longer. Because there's a shame aspect. I'm no longer that person. He leaves the location. He's Mishana Makomo. He changes his location. All the goodwill that he had in that original location, he forfeits it. He's stripping himself of his identity. So where is he beginning? He's beginning at point zero. I'm nothing. When a person has that sense of nothingness, then he has a sense of clarity. So if you sense you nothing because of what the wrong you did, and the wrong is only because it's rooted in Emunah b'Hashem, then you have everything. Then you have everything. So now, there's an interesting Yalkut at the beginning of Bereshis. The beginning of Bereshis, the Psukim begin when it describes the reality of existence. At the beginning of existence, it says, "V'oretz yosoy v'vo, v'choshech al pnei sehom." It was tohu, it was unformed, it was chaotic. There was darkness al pnei sehom. That's what it was. So the Midrash tells us, if you take a look in the Yalkut tells us that each one of these words allude to one of the four exiles of Klal Yisrael, to Bavel, to Parsamodai, to Yavon, and to Edom. And cites verses, psukim, to show why Tohu is Bavel, and Vo is Parsamodai, and Choshech, darkness is Yavon, and Tehom, the unlimited depth of water, that's Edom, because the Golos Edom hasn't ended yet. That's Edom, okay? So, but what's going to be ultimately, how is this going to end? Ruach Elokim. Ruach Elokim. What's Ruach Elokim? So the Medrash says, Ruach Elokim zerucho shel Mashiach. That's Ruach Elokim. Merachefes al pnei hamoyim. It's hovering over the water. What's the water? Eizu schus bo Mashiach, b'schus hatshuva. Mashiach will only come b'schus hatshuva. Only then. And why is tshuva mayim? Cites the posuk, shivchi kamayim libech. That when a person does tshuva and you come to those levels of realization of how wrong and how serious and grave that transgression is, shivchi kamayim libech. So that's chus hatshuva. Ruach Elokim is the ruach shel Metziach. That's the spirit of Mashiach. Be'ezes chushu bo. And what merit does he come? B'schus hatshuva. Shivchi kamayim libech. But again, but what is tshuva? Tshuva is the what? Is the lave. What's the mayim? What does the mayim depict? What is mayim? When a person is so overwhelmed with pain due to the remorse, what is he? And he cries to that degree. He's broken. All that exists in that moment, as we find by Avram Avinu, by the Akedah, it says, Avram b'kalkelis Ashura. Avram Avinu was 137 years old at the time of the Akedah. Avram Avinu already was declared by the world as Nasi Elokim. He was the Prince of God. He was the wealthiest man in the world. A man like that has to hitch his own donkey. But it says, from here we see, Avram b'kalkelis Ashura. What exactly does that mean? Avram Avinu's Avos Hashem, his love for God, was totally all-consuming, that at that moment, there's only one thing that existed at that moment. The Ratzon Hashem, the will of God, to bring his son to the Akedah. That's all existed. At that moment, Avram didn't exist. His wealth didn't exist. His acclaim didn't exist. All that existed at that moment, due to his love, was only to fulfill the will of Hashem. He was negated, total negation. A person who does tshuva, and he recognizes how grave and how serious that aveiro chet, whatever level it was, automatically he's negated, because he realizes, based on the depth of understanding of how severe it is, it's all rooted in what? In who HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. The more you understand who God is, then you understand how grave the transgression is. As a result of that, if you recognize that, it's literally Avram b'kalkelis Ashura. It's because of that. It's due to that. All that matters is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, that's the leiv nishbar v'nitke Elokim lo sivzeh. That's the broken and smattered heart, Elokim lo sivzeh. Elokim is a famous word from the Shalach Kodesh. We know that Yudke Vavke is the appellation for Midas HaRachmim. That's the attribute of mercy. Elokim is the appellation for the Midas Hadin. Elokim. And Pasuk says, Leiv nishbar v'nitke elokim lo sivzeh. So the Shalah says that if it's a leiv nishbar v'nitke, a person who's so broken due to the tshuva that he's doing, even the midas adin, even the attribute of justice will not disgrace that person. Why? What's the reason? Because we refer to when we said that inside a tokef, who's a person? Gecheres nishbar. We're like a broken piece of pottery, a shard of pottery, broken. A kli cheres becomes contaminated. It cannot be relieved of the contamination if you put it in the mikveh. The only way it can be relieved of that contamination, you have to break it. You smash it, you break it, where it no longer functions in the capacity of a kli, of a vessel. Why? Because it's only mikabel tumah, it only has relevance to contamination. Only when it's a kli, when it has that function. But if it's broken, it's no longer a kli, so therefore that contaminant has no relevance. If a person himself, what are we? We're a kli. It's written in the Svarim, why does a person sin? Does he sin because the neshama is inclined to chet, or it's because of the physicality of the person? A person is a composite of spiritual and physical. The body is the animal. It's referred to as nefesh bahami. The what? We have animalistic instincts. But yet, simultaneously, we have a neshama, we have a soul, and it's a struggle. Who overpowers who? But naturally inclined, we're inclined to the physicality. So what draws us to sin, at whatever level we sin, or the ego we speak about? It's the physicality. So what's the physicality? Man was made from Ophir. You're made from Ophir, we go back to Ophir. So if you take the kli, which sinned due to its function of a kli, and you break it, elokim lo sivzeh, even the midas adin, even the attribute of justice will not disgrace it. We'll take that person and accept that person. And the midas adin is what? That's the prosecutor. The sultan is the prosecutor. He comes with a claim, he audits the record. But if the record is only if the person exists. Here there's no person. There's no person to prosecute because the person himself, due to his depth of pain and understanding of what he did, he's what? He's cheres nishbar. He's a broken piece of pottery. Therefore, there's nothing to talk about. Now, we say in the Shemon Esrei, "V'titen lonu Hashem Elokeinu be'ava es yom hazikaron hazeh." Hashem gave us out of love the day of remembrance. Yom hazikaron. Yom Truah. He gave be'ava. Yom Truah. Because it's Yom HaZikaron. What does Yom HaZikaron mean? So it's cited in Sfarim, the only day that the Satan, who's the arch prosecutor of Klal Yisrael, could prosecute is only on Rosh Hashanah. There's no other day HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows him to prosecute. He has the stage. It's his stage. That's what it is. And he prosecutes every nuance of that record. That's what he does. Yom Zikaron. What is it Zikaron? It's a day of remembrance, meaning he remembers. That's true. But factually, it's only because there's a prosecution. Because the Sultan prosecutes the record. That's what happens. But it's Yom Zikaron, but it's Yom Truah. But simultaneously, because it's Yom Truah, it's Yom Yabova, so what does the Yabova mean? It's a day of crying. Because we're so overwhelmed with accepting the Malchus Shamayim, we're so negated to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I gave you the example. Who am I? We say every morning right after Birchas HaShachar, Chol HaChomin, Nivoyin Kailufna, Giborim, we're nothing. We're nothing. So when you come to the realization of who HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we said, Imul Fonei Malchios, it's a total negation. When you pitch yourself against HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Yisodei HaTorah, there's a famous question which is asked. Avos Hashem is a mitzvah saseh. It's a positive commandment. Any mitzvah in the Torah, other than majority, even if you don't want to do it, you can force yourself to do it. It has relevance to Bechira, the free choice. Love is an emotion. Either you love or you don't love. But yet, there's a positive commandment. You must love Hashem. You must love Him. The person says, I don't love Him. So it's impossible to say the Torah gives us an obligation, commands us to love, and love is the emotion. So evidently, it's within our ability somehow to put it in a vein, in a perspective that we could love Him, despite everything. How do you do it? How does one do it? So the Rambam writes in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah that we're talking about a person who believes in Hashem, a person who believes in God. And if you look at the Bria, you look at creation, look at the terrestrial level, you look at the heavenly, the celestial, look at all this. It's something which is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. The genius which exists in a fiber, it's divine genius. And if you multiply it infinite times, which is the Bria, and you realize that whatever you are, the Chachamim, the Voinim, Ka'ayin Lefonecha, we're nothing. The moment you become negated, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the human being, the only thing that occludes us from seeing the emes is our ego. Our ego. You think you are. I'll give you an example. Person can't lift more than 5 pounds. And you have a person, he can lift 1,000 pounds. And he goes and he thinks in his mind, he's a match for the person who can lift 1,000 pounds. If he has any degree of normalcy, he's not giving an attempt. He understands versus that person. He has no relevance to that. So if a person is a high school student, straight A student in physics, pit him up against Einstein, is there a consideration that he has any value versus Einstein? Definitely not. He feels he has awe. He has fear because he understands that Einstein's presence, because he understands what physics is. This physics student, he understands he knows nothing. And the moment he has that sense of feeling nothing, automatically he's totally negated to that. If a person, lahavdil, is able to come to the realization and he appreciates the unlimited divine genius in the Bria, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a human being, we gravitate to something which we appreciate to be more special. He says it will evoke the greatest degree of ava because we want to be associated with the Creator, with the Boirei who brought all this into existence. That's what it's all about. That's how it happens. It's the realization. The greater the realization, the greater the negation. If you're totally negated, there's no blockage. There's nothing to occlude your vision and your understanding that you're able to internalize the reality of what that is. And once you internalize that, automatically, almost like magnetically, you're attracted to that. That's how you come to Avas Hashem. Those are the words of Rambam. Yom Truah. If you understand Imrul Farnei Malchus, and you understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we just said yesterday, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mamlich Melochim V'lo Amlucha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he coronates the kings. But who is the king? Who is the king? The king is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you understand what that means, what the king means, and what a subject means, what all this means, automatically you have that sense of awe because you're negated. You understand who he is and who we are. No, we said a pasuk yesterday, quoted a pasuk, Asher Yom Yodei Yisruah. Asher Yom Yodei Yisruah. So the Medrash asks, V'umas ha'olam einem yodim Yisruah. What, the nations of the world, and it lists multiple wind instruments that they play. I mean, are we the equivalent of them? They outpace us in the musical field endless times over. But we're Asher Yodem Yodei Yisruah. We, as Jews, we're Yodei Yisruah. In what way are we Yodei Yisruah? We know how to blow better than they blow. So the Medrash says, Ashrei Odom She'odei Lefato Yisboira B'Truah. Fortunate is the person who could seduce his creator with the Truah. What's the seduction? A Jew could seduce Hashem. The non-Jew cannot seduce Hashem, regardless of the way he blows that horn, that trumpet, whatever he blows. What's the seduction? The seduction is Imrul Fanei Malchus. A Jew himself has, because he's Chelik al Mal, the Rav Chaim Voloshin writes Nefesh HaChaim that the Nishmas Yisrael, the Jewish soul, is of such a dimension that even the greatest angel is not able to fathom and understand the makeup of the Nishmas Yisrael. That's Rav Chaim Voloshin cites sources for this. Why? Because the Nishmas Yisrael, it was created mitachas kisi hakavod. It was created from under the heavenly throne. The Malachim, even the greatest Malachim, are further down. And it's beyond their grasp, it's beyond their reach. Therefore, it's something they themselves cannot even fathom. That's what the Nishmas Yisrael is. The Nishmas Yisrael having that capacity, which the non-Jews don't have that capacity. They're limited to Shev Mitzvah Bnei Noach. That only indicates that, tells us exactly what their spiritual makeup is. It's a whole different spiritual makeup. They have a different soul. As a result of that, we're able to come to realizations and what we call hasogas, understandings of our internalization, which automatically negates us to him. That's the seduction. What is the blowing of the shofar? That's coronation. When you coronate a king means, I live for the king. I'm the subject of the king. That's what I am. Subject of the king, you're just his chattel. That's all it is, no more than that. As a result of that, so we speak about Yom Hazikaron, Yom Truah, Yom Yabova. When we coronate Hashem, we come, it's Yom Yabova. Automatically, if you understand who he is and who we are, automatically, you're overwhelmed with shame. We don't even have a right to stand in the presence of this person. Just share with you a story. Many years ago, he was a Yeshivat Ohr Somayach in Muncie. Came from Liverpool, England. And was married a Balas Tshuva from Bethesda, Maryland. And he was learning in the Kollel in Ohr Somayach in Muncie. And he asked me, she has a friend who her father is the editor of the archaeological magazine for the Reform movement. Whatever her name was. His name is Elisha Shanks. I'm going back now 25 years ago. And her friend is a student in Yale in the divinity program. Yale has a divinity program. What is she studying? She's studying Talmud. And she's engaged to a non-Jew from the law school, Yale Law School. So she asked me, could she bring a friend over who's visiting for Shabbos? Could she bring her over for lunch? Because I lived in Muncie at the time. I said, of course you could bring her over. She says, maybe you'll be able to speak to her, discourage her from getting involved, furthering the relationship. I said, definitely. So she comes to my house, and the couple already explained to them what I know in terms of Shas. And she walks into the room, and she's working on a PhD in Talmud. That's what she's getting a PhD in, this woman who's engaged to a non-Jew. And she walks in, she says, Rabbi, I'm ashamed to stand in your presence. Knowing what you know and what I don't know, I'm ashamed even to stand in your presence. That's what she said to me. It's the first thing. And she was even ashamed even to walk into the room. So I said, no, don't worry, it's okay. You sit down, make yourself at home. So she sat down at the table, and one of my sons, today, Baruch Hashem, he's not my oldest sons, the younger sons, he's turning 38 now, and then he was 8 years old in Cheder. So I said to him, what are you writing your thesis on? On Yush, on the laws of despair. That's what she's writing. And my son just started to learn Gemara, 8 years old, Elam Mitzis in the Cheder. And my son's name is Shlomo. I say, Shlomo, you want to explain to her a little bit what Yush is? What he said in 5 minutes, she could write 20 theses. It's not the equivalent of what he knows. But this is what, and she came to the realization then, I said, and who's your chavrusa? His chavrusa is the professor of Talmud who's a Christian woman. That's what it is. You understand? So the person, when you come to the realization, you see emes, then you have an understanding what sheker is. But until you see emes, you believe sheker maybe is emes. But once you see emes, then it's no question. The sheker is sheker. So again, it's an understanding. So if you come and especially Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of our session Tshuva. There's already this closeness, this intimacy, and it continues through our session Tshuva. It's very interesting. One of the allusions for Elul is something we read in last week's parsha. Omol Hashem es levavcha es levav zerecha. Es levavcha es levav zerecha. The first letters are Elul. So that's an allusion to Elul. Omol Hashem es levavcha es levav zerecha. There's a special siyata d'shmaya during Elul to do tshuva. Hashem touches our hearts, our emotion, that we come upon this sense of truth more easily now. But at what level is it? If you take a look in the Rambam, on the pasuk, Mol Hashem es levavcha es levav zerecha, he's speaking, this is after Imus Mashiach, after Mashiach comes. What's going to happen when Mashiach comes? As we just said in the tefillah of Rosh Hashanah, it's what? All evil comes to an end. And once evil comes to an end, it's called Yom She'ein Lehem Chayfetz. The days have no value any longer. The only reason why our life has value is because we're always in the position where we're challenged. And we go in either direction. If we go in the right direction, we're fully deserving of that level of accomplishment because we didn't have to, it was only our own initiative. If Chas v'Shalom, you go in the wrong direction, you're culpable for that transgression. Because again, you were in a position you had control. Once this bittul hara, evil comes to an end, then you no longer have, the challenge is no longer there. Umol Hashem es levavcha v'zvav zerecha. He says, what's the orlas halev? What is the covering of the heart? Similar to the foreskin, that's the evil of the Eitz Hadas. That will be negated, that will be expunged from existence. It's no longer there. But the remes for Elul is in that pasuk of L'osid Lavo at the end of time when there'll be a total negation of evil. What we're experiencing during Dirshu Hashem b'motza krov yosakorov, it's a semblance of that. Because if the Torah itself is alluding in those words, Elul, it's giving us an inkling, an understanding of what level of siyata d'shmaya is availed to us, the divine assistance is availed to us. The Gemara says in Shabbos, Habod l'tayir v'saynosei. Of course, we have to have some degree of initiative, even an iota of initiative. You have the initiative, but what's available is something which is unlimited, at a level which has a semblance of at the end of time where there's no longer evil, to that degree, that once you hook into the system, you have a room totally dark, and you have a source of electricity, and you have a beacon that when it glows, it's 1,000,000 watts, and you put it into that. Before you put it in, dark, but you have to put it into that socket. Once you put in that socket, the glow is blinding. The same thing. We have to take the initiative. Dirshu Hashem b'motzo. We need the drisha. We have to seek him out. How much seeking out? You don't have to seek him out much. But as long as you have an interest in going in that direction, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will actually give you that assistance to be able to achieve that. Just not sure about the time where I'm at. I'm over time. I just want to end with this, something I heard from Rav Gifter Zeichet Tzaddik V'Rocha many years ago. There was a mashal, there was an allegory he said over from the Alta of Kelm. What's siyata d'shmaya? Phenomenal. The Alta of Kelm. I think this was before Reb Nota's time. This mashal was said. Rav Gift, I heard this. He said it over when he was in Telz in Europe. They said it over. The Alta of Kelm was no longer alive when he was in Europe then. He says, what is siyata d'shmaya? He explained the Alta of Kelm. Rabbi Simcha Zissel Zif was known as the Alta of Kelm, that in the medieval times, they had all kinds of contests. What was the contest? They had a ladder which was 180 rungs. And whoever was able to climb to the 180th rung, and there was a platform, he would win a purse of gold. But there was a prerequisite before you began ascending the ladder. You had to put on a belt with a very large iron buckle. Nobody understood why. Okay? So it's already going years. Person reaches the 30th rung, the 40th rung. The ladder is swaying in the wind. The person feels his strength is ebbing. He's going to fall to his death, comes down. Year after year, the purse of gold is waiting to be won. Finally, one person is Meshuga lo yisadover. He's willing to give his life no matter what, and he's going to give it all he has, even if he falls to his death. He'll fall to his death. Puts on the buckle. He starts climbing. He already passed rung 60. He has to get to 180. Now, how do you go from 60 to 180? And he feels already the ladder is swaying, and he doesn't have the strength to hold on to go to 180. All of a sudden, he goes to 60. The moment he hits 62, he feels a magnetic force drawing him up all the way to 180. The reason why he was wearing that iron buckle on his belt, it had to be within the proximity where that magnetic force was. He had to get close enough. You only have to go to that point. Once you hit that point, you soar all the way to the top. That's what the Alta of Kelm, Reb Ziv said, that's what Siyat Shema is. Dishu Hashem b'motzai. Take the initiative. Whatever that initiative, small initiative, but you have to take an initiative. Once you take that initiative, the flow of energy that comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is something not to be believed. And it plays on itself, and it grows, and it intensifies. And we should all be zocher, to be zocher, to Siyat Shema, to take advantage of Dishu Hashem b'motzai. It should culminate with the Nila on Yom Kippur. We should be nichtav and nechtam b'sifru shel tzadikim.